Hi, and welcome back to this week's Parsha Shir on Sefer Or Gedalyahu. This week, we will be studying the concept of chipazon, the concept of haste, as it is connected to redemption. And the word haste, chipazon, is actually an uncommon word that only appears 3 times in all of Tanakh, but always in the context of redemption. The first time, of course, most famously appears in our Parsha, in Parshat Bo. The Pasuk says, speaking about the Korban Pesach that we would offer on the eve of our exodus from Egypt, V'kacha tochlu oto. This is how you should eat the Korban Pesach. Matnechem chagurim, nalechem beraglechem, makelchem beyedchem. You should eat it literally ready to go. You will be on the cusp of the Exodus, and therefore when you're eating the Korban Pesach, it's almost like you have one foot out the door of Egypt. And therefore, in order to eat it properly, you should have your belt strapped and your shoes on your feet and your walking staff in your hand, as if you're ready to leave at that very moment. Ve'achaltem oto b'chipazon, and you should eat it, therefore, the Korban Pesach, in haste, in chipazon. The whole exodus from Egypt is being described here as one that occurs b'chipazon. Pesach hu la'Hashem. This is the Korban Pesach that we offer to Hashem in Egypt. This concept of chipazon in Yetzias Mitzrayim is repeated again in Parshas Rei in a similar context. The pasuk there says, "Lo tochal alav chametz, shivas yamim tochal alav matzos lechem oni ki b'chipazon yatzata me'eretz Mitzrayim." For 7 days you should eat matzah, not chametz, lechem oni. You should eat with the Korban Pesach. This is the holiday of Pesach being described, and why should we do all this? Again, ki b'chipazon yatzata me'eretz Mitzrayim. Here it's more in the context of matzah and chametz versus Korban Pesach, and there's much to say about this. There's some wonderful shirim that have been given even here in KMS about the concept of chipazon around Pesach time, but I'm not going to deal with that here today. There are actually some other fascinating questions. An interesting comment of the Medrash, which I will mention just for a second, which actually notes that if you're trying to understand why chipazon was necessary in Yetzias Mitzrayim, you actually have to think about it in terms of 3 different interested parties in chipazon. You have the Egyptians who were interested in chipazon, in haste, because of course the plagues were destroying their country, they were destroying their infrastructure, and therefore they were interested in the Jews leaving hastily. There was the Israelites, Bnei Israel themselves, the Jewish people. They were interested in haste for a number of reasons, none the least of which is that they were worried Paro would change his mind, as he had so many times before, about letting them go out of Egypt. So he was ready to let them go. Haste, let's go, let's leave, let's get out of here. And of course, the third party the Medrash points out is HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself was interested in the Geula specifically happening b'chipazon. That's, of course, the most fascinating and nuanced concept of all. So the first 2 mentions in Tanakh, Sefer Shmot, Sefer Dvarim, both in the context of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The third reference is actually in Sefer Yeshayahu, Perek Nun Bet, where Yeshayahu is describing his vision, his prophecy for the end of days, for the final redemption. And over there, he interestingly mentions the concept of chipazon as well, only in the opposite way. He says that in the time of the final redemption, ki lo b'chipazon tetzeu, you will not leave the exile in haste. In contrast to Yetzias Mitzrayim, the final redemption will not occur quickly. You won't be running away from the places where you live. The reason Yeshayahu gives is because Hashem will be walking before you and will be gathering you, the God of Israel. The Medrash points out the contrast between Yetzias Mitzrayim and the final redemption in terms of chipazon, and the Medrash actually points out a second contrast between them as well. L'sheyavar ki b'chipazon yatzatem mimitzrayim, aval la'atid lavo First contrast is that the first Exodus has chipazon, the final redemption does not have chipazon, does not have haste. In addition to that, says the Medrash, there's a second contrast, which is already hinted to in the end of this pasuk in Yeshayahu, where it says that we will go out of that exile towards redemption with Hashem leading the way. The Medrash takes license from that and other psukim in terms of describing Yetzias Mitzrayim to say l'she'avar Ani u beit dini haiti mahalech lifnechem. In the original redemption from Egypt, Yitzias Mitzrayim, God says, the image of me leading you will be like me and my Beis Din, me and my court, me and my judge. It's an image of din. It's an image of judgment. However, Lati lavo ani levadi. But in the final redemption, those judgments will not be there. I will lead you alone, as if to say alone, without judgment. The Or Gedalyahu addresses himself to this medrash in two ways. Number one, the Or Gedalyahu wants to understand why chipazon was necessary in Yitzias Mitzrayim and not in the final redemption. And secondly, the Or Gedalyahu wants to understand what the connection is between the two images of God leading us out and the chipazon, lack of chipazon contrast. Why is it that in the context of chipazon, God leads us out of Yitzias Mitzrayim with his judges around him, his judgment scene, and in the final redemption, where there is no chipazon, God leads us alone? What do those images mean? And he explains as follows. HaKesher v'ashaychut ben elu bet ha'ma'amarim mevuar. We could explain the connection between these two clauses of the Mishnah in the Medrash, in the following way. Ki inyan hachipazon b'Mitzrayim hayta b'chdei shelo yiplu b'nei Yisrael letoch shar hachamishim. The whole purpose of chipazon, of haste when we left Egypt, was so that the Jewish people wouldn't fall to the 50th level of Tumah. This is a very common idea in Chazal, that the Jewish people were sunk so low in terms of their spiritual achievements, in terms of their identity as Jews. They were so sunken into the culture of Egypt and of idolatry that they were hardly discernible as Jews anymore. And if they had sunk any lower than that, they would have been lost forever. And therefore, Hashem had to come sweeping in with great haste, as if to grab them at that moment before they fell any lower, like a person hanging with one hand holding on to a cliff, about to fall down. If a person doesn't come swoop in, grab their hand, then they'll fall off the edge of the cliff into the abyss. So too the Jewish people. If they had fallen any further, they would have been lost forever. And therefore, chipazon, haste, was necessary in order to save them and in order to get them out. Aval la'atid lavo mevuar b'sfarim iyeh ha'geula af mitoch shar ha'chamishim. In the final redemption, however, haste will not be necessary, because it is a well-known concept in Chazal that in the days of the final redemption, the Jewish people will be redeemed even from the 50th level of Tumah, even if they sink so low beyond anyone's imagination, out of their identity and into the cultures of wherever they are, so far from their spirituality, from their connection to Torah and to Hashem, they will still be saved in that Geula. They will still be redeemed in that Geula. We are promised that the Jewish people will never, ever be lost forever. And therefore, there is no danger of sinking lower, and therefore no need for the haste of God coming b'chipazon to save us. The question is why? Why will we be saved even from the 50th level of Tumah, whereas in Egypt we wouldn't have been? And he explains as follows. Because one major thing changed between Yitzias Mitzrayim and the final redemption, and that is Matan Torah, the gift that Hashem gave us of His Torah. And that gift makes all the difference in terms of how low we could sink before being lost. Before Matan Torah, we had no connection. We had no foundation. If we had sunk any lower, we would have been lost and never retrievable. But once we receive the Torah, we have such a strong link, such a strong identity that is implanted so deeply in our soul and the eternal soul of the Jewish people that it can never be extracted. It can never be lost. It could be lost from the conscious sphere, but not from the unconscious sphere. It can be lost perhaps from the physical realm in terms of our observance and our actions, but never lost from the depths of the spiritual nature of the Jewish people, from the depths of the soul of the individual and collective Jewish people. And therefore, there is no risk of us being lost forever, and no need for a hasty geula. L'chein lo yeh tzorach l'chipazon begeula ta'atid. There is no need for haste. The Or Gedalyahu says that can also help us to understand the two images of God leading us out in each redemption. In the case of Egypt, as we know from other Mamarei Chazal, the Jewish people on the eve of the Exodus were being accused, as if they were being accused by the Malachim. Halalu ovdei avodah zara, halalu ovdei avodah zara. The Malachim claimed in correct form that the Jewish people were no different than the idolaters around them. Why did they deserve to be saved? Without the foundation, without the identity given to them by the Torah, the Jewish people in Egypt were rudderless. They were almost indiscernible from those around them. And if that was the case, there was great kitrug, there was great prosecution in the judgment sense on the Jewish people at that time, and a debate whether they should be taken out or not. Therefore, the image of God taking them out is God and his Beis Din, God and his Din, entourage. It was a mode of rachamim, yes, God's compassion to take us out of Egypt, but it was tinged with a bit of din, a judgment or kitrug or prosecution as well, as if the Jewish people had to defend themselves somehow in order to be redeemed, in order to be saved. However, in the final redemption of Al Atid Lava, Lo Yeshum Kitrug, Rak Yeh Ani Lavadi. The image of God alone is indicative of the fact that in the final redemption, there will be no kitrug, there will be no accusation against the Jewish people. And the reason for that, says the Or Gedalyahu, is the connection between the two clauses of the Medrash. Because the Jewish people, once they've received the Torah, have such a strong identity and connection to Hashem that there is no room for accusation about whether or not they will be worthy of the Geula. If that's true, there's no danger of them being lost, and because of that, there is no need for God in his image to have the entourage of Din around him. The image of God alone leading us is an image of mercy. It's a beautiful idea about the contrast between the first redemption and the final one, the need for haste, the lack of need for haste, the idea of kitrug and lack of kitrug, and it all fits together very, very nicely according to the Or Gedalyahu. I will share one more little tidbit before I end, and that is not really from the Or Gedalyahu, but actually from Rav Kook. Rav Kook has a different notion of why chipazon was necessary in the first Geula and not in the final Geula. And although there's much more to say about it, I will leave you with this thought just so you can think about the contrast, perhaps in terms of the vision of the Or Gedalyahu and Rav Kook. Rav Kook in the Mamarei Ra'aya explains that the first Geula happens by itaruta de la'ela. It was a divine arousal. God decides completely in a miraculous, unnatural way to come and swoop in and save the Jewish people. It was entirely miraculous, and therefore it happens b'chipazon, in an instant, because God is above time. God comes right now, swoops in a miraculous way, totally subverts the laws of nature, and does the impossible. Takes the Jewish people out of Egypt. Goy mikerev goy, be'otot b'moftim b'yad chazaka v'zron tuyah be'otot b'moftim is all of what we say at the Seder. The final redemption, however, will happen not by itaruta de la'ela, but itaruta de latata, by arousal from below, by natural means, by human effort to bring about the redemption, to perfect ourselves in such a way, to connect the concept of God and Torah, that we ourselves in the human realm, in the natural sphere, will bring about the redemption. And a redemption like that doesn't happen b'chipazon, because chipazon is a godly concept. In the human world, things go step by step, slowly but surely, one phase after the other, one step, one rung of the ladder after the next, until you get to your final destination. And that's how the final redemption will happen. Lo b'chipazon, but rather through great human effort. Whether you latch on to the concept of Rav Kook or the Or Gedalyahu, I think there is tremendous insight into the nature of the Jewish people in exile in the time period we are living in, and as we look forward to ultimately, hopefully, the redemption that will come very soon in our days, because they both cast the Jewish people at this point in our history in a very special light. According to Rav Kook, the Jewish people are empowered to bring about the Geula. That's an incredible thing. According to the Or Gedalyahu, the Jewish people are so deeply entrenched and intertwined with the Torah that no matter how far we go, we are never too far gone to come back. that is an incredibly empowering concept as well. And that is an incredibly special concept to think about in terms of the great gift HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us in the Torah, which is not just a way of life and not just a way of fulfilling His commandments and bringing spirituality and divinity into the world, but ultimately like a lifeline, an eternal connection to Him that will never, ever go away. And it's up to us to take that connection and to strengthen it further and further until our own perfection, the perfection ultimately of the world around us. Shabbat Shalom.